Welcome to Leading the Next Generation with Tim Elmore. I'm your co-host, Andrew McPeak, and our mission here is to empower the emerging generations with skills to lead in real life. Tim, I'm excited about today's conversation.
Me too.
It's a hot topic.
Yes, it is, especially right now.
It really is. So many people are talking about it. It's AI. More particularly, we're talking about ChatGPT. I know AI is showing up in a lot of different places, but that's kind of the one that's sort of risen to the top. In fact, I think it's grown faster than many other applications that have become famous, and it's become a really big topic. Lots of people are talking about.
It seems like it popped up almost overnight, at least in my head.
Yeah.
First, you're seeing it on television, on broadcast, podcasts, and so forth. And we just felt like today, listeners, we'd love to give you just a bit of an insight in case you haven't thought thoroughly about this, and maybe even a game plan if you're an educator or a parent or just someone that cares about the next generation.
Yeah.
That's what today's conversation is about.
So looking back, I think everybody will have a story of the first time they heard about ChatGPT or the first kind of memory that sticks out in my mind. You had a really interesting one because you were talking with a friend who was just at a conference and got a really powerful experience as to what this stuff could really do for us.
Yeah. So my friend Don attended a national speakers convention out in the West Coast and loved it.
Yeah.
But he said, you won't believe this. He said the first guy that got up to speak smiled, held up his latest book and said, "This is the latest book I authored," or should I say co-authored. And he began to reveal that he had written it with ChatGPT.
Wow.
That's what everybody said in the audience.
Yeah.
Because it's all new still at this point. This is several months ago. But he began to talk about the fact that this author had put in information into the software, you know, and ChatGPT came back with this book. Here's the style, here's the tone, here's what we want to say, here's some insights.
Yeah.
Because it's an accumulation of insight from all of human knowledge, basically.
Yeah.
So the book title, is I don't even know what the book title was, but it's co-authored. But at the back, you found out it was all tongue in cheek.
Okay.
I mean, he even has endorsements on the back cover. This is the best book I ever read, Alexa. That sort of thing. So he was
the other
making
technologies
fun.
that are
But he was revealing this is possible to author a book, send it to a publisher, get published, and he didn't actually write the book, just gave some inputs.
Yeah.
And this chat feature came back.
Filled in the gaps.
So he found out very quickly that there are publishers that are putting a moratorium on authors that might use this device because there's moral implications.
Yeah.
Did you write this or did someone else write this?
And possibly future legal implications. I know there's a
That's
lot
true.
of talk right now about are different websites and companies going to start keeping track of when ChatGPT takes something from their site.
There's musicians like Rihanna that are saying, "Hey, you just created my voice and I don't, it's wonderful and terrible."
Yeah.
It's wonderful and terrible at the same time.
And we're, I think, in the middle. It's fair to say, I think we're in the middle of the moral panic stage on this technology. And it's not the first one, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's easy in a moment to think, sort of chronocentrically and say, this is the craziest thing that's ever happened. And it is pretty crazy. I will give you that. But if you look at the history of moral panics, you've got the radio in the 1930s that we thought this is
horrible.
It's invading our homes and taking our children. There was, of course, TV in the 50s and 60s. I just listened to a podcast about the moral panic around Dungeons and Dragons in the 80s, right? That was a big one. Video games come around in the 90s, and then there's cell phones and then smartphones in the 2000s and 10s. So it's not the first time something has come out and we've gone, oh no, right? But we do have to admit in some ways ChatGPT is a little different.
Well, I remember in the 5th grade, there was a parent-teacher meeting and conversation going on. Should we let kids use calculators in math class?
Yeah.
Now, are they going to learn how to compute, to do math equations? And really, that was a big deal. But if you think about it, that was an older iteration of the same conversation.
Yep.
Will our skill sets drop if we have a machine do it for us? Well, now calculators are on our phone.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
they're a dime a dozen. Yeah.
That's right. And somehow we made it past that. Now, I will argue sometimes our muscles shrink if we don't use them. So maybe I'm not as good at calculating math with a calculator in my hand, but I'm repurposing it for other things.
Yeah.
We're going to have to figure out if this ChatGPT becomes something that we make a tool rather than a weapon. I always quote Kevin Kelly, an author that I just really admire.
He's brilliant, yes.
He said, smart technology advances so quickly it outpaces our ability to civilize it.
Mm.
So this conversation, we're not the most brilliant people in the world, but
Yeah.
we want to help you civilize this new feature.
In a lot of ways, we're just sort of slowing down and going, what are we actually talking about?
Yeah.
What does the conversation look like? And what advice, ultimately, of course, you're going to give us some advice on how to handle this, at least in the early stages of where we're at right now.
So for listeners that maybe say, I don't even know what you guys are talking about, if you haven't yet heard of GPT, you ought to look into it. You can Google and find all kinds of articles and descriptions on it. But it's a new app from OpenAI, a Silicon Valley tech company, that's heralding it as a game changer. Unfortunately, it may not be changing the game for the better on all fronts.
Yeah.
Like a kid in school that goes, at 11:59, I'm going to put some inputs in this, get this paper for history class, and I didn't have to
turn it in at noon.
That's right. Yeah. So ChatGPT enables you as a user to input information, and almost like a vending machine. I know that's an overspeak, but almost like a vending machine. Out comes the solution you requested, absolutely free.
Yep.
A paper for school.
Yep.
A report for your boss.
Yep.
A document that collates the data on a problem and reports it succinctly, which I think could be very helpful.
Very helpful.
Saving you time.
Absolutely.
In fact, you just told me when it first came out, didn't you put in some things? Talk about that real quick.
Yeah, we've actually, we use it around the office a couple of times, sometimes as a joke. I remember one of our teammates, Cam, said, I want you to write a song about, from Tim Elmore's voice talking about this. And we had a great time with that. But one of the things we've used it for is to kind of begin brainstorming on a topic. So if we said, hey, we want to talk about 10 benefits and 10 drawbacks to a teenager having a smartphone. ChatGPT will collate some information. And what we found is it's not a great end result, right?
Yes.
You're going to get what you're going to get when you use it, which is typically not super polished. But what we found is it's a great way to sort of begin the conversation.
Yes.
And so it's been interesting to kind of explore it and see what it can do and what it can't do so far.
Well, it is stunning. And it's only going to get more accurate as the tool evolves and more information is put in. You will have the accumulation of human knowledge in a device. So listeners, you probably already spotted the ethical implications of this tool,
Not
even
hard to
without
see.
us.
Yeah.
So one of our team members that I just love has a couple of teenagers, her own kids, and one goes to a private school, one goes to a public school.
Yeah.
And after this became a thing, she was talking to her kids one night, and her daughter said, who goes to the private school, oh my gosh, we've already had a student meeting with the entire student body talking about the moral implications and the ethical drama that could happen, and this will get you in trouble. And they were warning him, like the kind of talks I remember hearing on marijuana when I was a freshman in high school.
Don't do drugs, dare, and all that stuff.
That's right. So she came back home for dinner and said, wow, I'm never going to touch that. It sounds awful.
Yeah.
Her son, my friend's, our teammate's son, said, oh, everybody uses that at my school. We're writing papers with it and so forth. So one of her kids said, no way. The other one goes, always, And
I don't believe that the teachers had even been talking to them about it at the
they
public
hadn't.
school.
In fact, they didn't even have language yet. It was so new. So the kids pick up on technology, excuse me, listeners.
Quite quickly.
A little bit more quickly than we do sometimes.
Yes.
So we've got to stay on top, even if you don't care as much about you staying on top of technology for the sake of this next generation who we all believe in and say we love. We've got to stay on top of it. So here's my question, Andrew.
Yeah, please.
Is this a tremendous help or a Trojan horse? You see what I did there?
You should say that again.
Okay.
I liked it.
Is this a tremendous help or a Trojan horse? And it could be either one.
That's some double alliteration there, folks.
Thank you for
That's
spotting
really
that,
good.
Andrew.
I like
I
that.
appreciate it. So if we can tame this artificial intelligence, it represents, I believe, an incredible help for our limited scope and capacity as people.
Yeah.
Our brains aren't everything. They're good, but they're not that good. Businesses can succeed more quickly and with fewer expenses. Taming it will help us in the fields of business, healthcare, law enforcement. Think about law enforcement with this tool, and just a whole bunch of other industries. But if we fail to tame it, this tool could serve as a Trojan horse for a younger generation who already sees the possibilities of essays written in less than a minute that could earn them better grades.
Yep.
I mean, I might have been tempted as a junior higher or a middle schooler, you know?
Absolutely.
And if those students feel the essay is too well written, they can request that ChatGPT create a new paper at a lower grade level.
Yeah.
Write it as an 8th grader, for this.
And it'll just crank it right out.
Yes.
It's quite amazing.
So I think it's possible to think of it as cheating 2.0. It's kind of a better way to cheat, and the bar for cheating successfully got lowered.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's already software that's been introduced to catch it, and we'll talk about that, listeners, at the end of this podcast, but we just got to beware at this point. It could be the end of education as we currently know it.
Yeah, and that it's not the first time that's happened, right? So you mentioned the example of the calculator. Math classes had to learn, how does this change math class, right? Curriculum had to be adjusted, conversations had to be had. It became the skill became no longer learning to do it pen and paper, but the skill became how to use the calculator, when to use the calculator. That's how I learned math growing up in the early 2000s going to school. And we're going to be having, I think, very similar conversations where it's, what is this helpful for and what is it not helpful for? Where is it robbing you of an opportunity and where is it expanding your skills and opportunities? So,
as we talked about this particular podcast, and you might remember, we talked about maybe helping schools launch well in the fall. And to be on board up front. So let's talk for just a little bit if we don't do that well. Okay,
let's do it.
So I mentioned the Trojan horse. You all remember the story of the Trojan horse, don't you, listeners? During a standoff between the Greeks and the Trojans, Greek soldiers were able to take the city of Troy after their 10-year fruitless siege. They had been battling it out. And they remember they build this, they carve out this Trojan horse. It's a big statue of a horse, a wooden one. And they climbed inside of it, or at least a bunch of them did. Not the whole army. But the Greeks said, oh, what a gift. What a gift this is. You see where I'm going, listeners? What a gift this is. They welcome it into the city, open up the gates, welcome it in. And of course, in the dark of night, these soldiers climb out, open up the gates from the inside. Everybody gets in and the city is taken. I don't want to overspeak. I don't want to be too dramatic here. But if we don't get ahead of this, we don't see the possible Trojan horse, we could be sabotaged. We could be ambushed by this under the cover of darkness that we just didn't know what was going on. So with ChatGPT, students no longer need to challenge themselves to write analytical essays on one of Newton's theories on physics, or to write a book report on Macbeth for literature class. A student could literally wait until minutes before class, just like you alluded to, Andrew, input a request for the length of paper, its style, its content, and have it ready before class begins. No problem that genuine learning never took place. No problem that writing skills never really deepened in the process. No problem that zero grit was cultivated. You're not going to develop grit on ChatGPT.
Not so much.
And then no problem that it promotes procrastination and laziness. I'll just be honest. I would be lazy if that's all I did and I didn't put parameters on it.
And I think parameters is the right word here, right? Because you're about to get into some ideas for how we utilize this tool really well. But when you think about, so if you go back to some of the things we've talked about, whether that's the calculator, right? Or we go back to computers or TV or smartphones, right? All of those things, I think we'd all agree have a place in our society. We don't want them to be everything, but we do recognize, in this part of what we're doing, this is a great place for it to live. And I think that's what we haven't figured out yet. Right now, we're letting it, I really think we are letting it be a Trojan horse. We're just welcoming it in and it's taken over, right? But what if we could sort of section off part of the city and go, this is where this tool belongs. Let's let it into that section, right? And sort of adopt it that way. Time will tell exactly what that looks like. But I think you're pointing to, let's not just let it in fully. Let's ask some questions about where it belongs and how it can be used and all those things. Maybe it's a tool for brainstorming. Maybe it's an aid that we can use to help ourselves improve. Maybe we're leveraging it as an additional study aid or teacher aid or something like that. I think there's so many possibilities to what it could look like in the future. We've just got to figure that out.
Yep, it's true.
So you're about to get to some solutions. Before we do, let's take a really quick ad break. And then when we come back, we'll talk about what do we actually do? What's our game plan? Hey guys, Andrew here. I'd like to talk to you about our curriculum, Habitudes for Social and Emotional Learning. Growing up in a post-pandemic world means that many students today are facing new challenges and often don't have the social and emotional skills to handle it all. When students possess skills like self-awareness, impulse control, empathy, teamwork, and responsible decision-making, they're prepared to not only survive, but succeed inside and outside of the classroom. Habitudes for Social and Emotional Learning comes in both middle school and high school versions and presents a fun, image-based pedagogy designed to delight and challenge your students. Find out more about how you can get Habitudes for Social and Emotional Learning to your school by going to growingleaders.com/SEL. All right, we are back. Tim, we've been talking about ChatGPT, some of the dangers it can propose to us, but also how do we do this thing really well? How do we lead our kids really well through it? So let's get towards that.
So this is all about creating a game plan. We don't have 40 steps. We've just got a handful. In fact, 4. But let's jump into them. If we don't do this, if we don't approach the fall semester, for instance, or the spring semester for that matter, with a game plan to use ChatGPT, the achievement gap is only going to worsen because some kids are going to have great access to it, others not so much. And it may come down to which schools have the capacity to combat essay writing or math problem solving. And while trained teachers can spot a deep fake, if given the chance, that kind of bandwidth is hard to come by with a class size increasing and a shortage of teachers.
Both of which are happening
That's
right now.
Exactly right, yeah. So can parents play a role in curbing the cheating? I think so. Perhaps it will be just as hard if both parents are working.
Yeah.
So I don't even have time. I just got home at 8 o'clock and I got to tuck the kids in or whatever. But I feel like we've got to find a way. This will not go away. And we don't want to look backwards and say, gee, I wish we would have done something back in 2023 or whatever.
I totally agree.
And in addition, I would add some schools are less likely to have the resources to purchase the plagiarism detecting software that we're about to bring up.
Yeah.
Because they just, we don't have any bandwidth on the budget.
Yeah.
So let's jump in. These are 4 steps. And I want you to volley back, Andrew. I've got a couple of ideas, but I want you to add your brain. Be my own ChatGPT.
I will,
All
yeah.
right,
I'll take what you're doing and remix it.
I'm cheating. Okay, number 1. The first thing I would say, educators and parents, is as the new school year or semester begins, number 1, form a partnership between educators and parents and make them aware.
Yeah.
I think awareness is always step 1. Don't assume they know. Don't just send an article out, although that could be part of the solution. In the face of any new technology, parents and educators need to lock arms and collaborate to offer guardrails. So not roadblocks, but guardrails. See what I did there?
I like that.
Okay, so we're saying it's probably going to be useful. In fact, I'm sure it's going to be useful, but let's keep you on the right path that you want to be on. So we can prevent students then from damaging mistakes. As the fall begins, I'm going to suggest you meet to talk about ChatGPT and its liabilities and abilities. Ensure that guardians understand the current ethical issues and form a pact to work together. I think if we're working together, we're going to get this right. In fact, this sounds terribly self-serving. Please forgive me. Send this podcast out and have parents listen to it.
Yeah.
That might be helpful.
Absolutely. This is essential. And you know this, if any other moral issue came up for your school, the first thing you would think is we need to let the parents know, right? Yeah. So why wouldn't we do that this way? And we've been in so many communities. We've seen so many schools where the healthiest form of the community is when they understand. I was actually just at a school that said, we really think of this as a 3-legged stool, right? It's the student, it's the teacher, and the parent. Yeah. And if we're not all 3 in sync, the stool's going to fall over, right? You've never heard of a 2-legged stool before. Yeah. So it was them acknowledging we've got to be in sync about what we're doing here. And it's going to begin by just awareness, conversation, intentionality. So I think you're speaking exactly to what needs to begin this conversation.
Excellent. All right. Number 2. Talk to your students about the benefits and dangers of ChatGPT and warn them. So beginning in middle school and high school, I would say, outline a communication plan to address this issue with your students. Help them see the long-term damage that they could do to their own records if they cheat. And what happens down the road if they take shortcuts now. The phrase we always like to use, I think I learned it from John Maxwell years ago, shortcuts don't pay off in the long run. Yeah. Shortcuts don't pay off in the long run.
Absolutely.
So share stories of past generations who faced dilemmas and made both good and poor decisions. So I'm just going to say right up front, make sure you communicate to your students that you see the up and the downside. Yeah. That you're not just the old fogey, the old grumpy old man that did it all terrible. Yeah. Let them know, hey, there's going to be some good and there's going to be some bad. Let's watch out for the bad.
Yeah, we're not saying we hate it just because it's new, right?
Yes.
So that might actually even be a good thing for a teacher to do or a principal to do at the beginning of the semester is almost make 2 columns and go, where is this good to use? Where is it not good to use, right? And even letting students know if if they're planning on utilizing it, letting them know, I just want you guys to know, we got this brand new software and we're going to be running every paper through it. So just be aware as you're working on that last minute paper at 11 o'clock at night, what's going to happen when you turn it in. And I think students just being aware of what the implications are, where the boundaries are and the guardrails are, to use that terminology, is going to help set up everybody for success, right? The last thing you want is a student who uses it not knowing that they're not allowed to, and they go, well, nobody ever told me, and all that kind of stuff. So,
I remember when Google searches started. Yes, I'm that old. But at first we wondered, will this take away our work ethic? Well, it sped up our search. So maybe ChatGPT is a way for students, like you just said earlier, to start their brain going in the right direction. Then you do the digging, but it may just accelerate research.
Yeah. And in that way, it's very similar to what was going on when I was in school with Wikipedia, right?
Yeah.
When I was in high school, Wikipedia was a no-no if you even went on that website.
It's not a real source.
Exactly. Yeah. Today, I think students are actually encouraged. Start there, look at some stuff, follow the footnotes and see what other research it's referring to. So in a lot of ways, we need to kind of have that even-handed approach to this new technology.
I think so. All right, number 3, remind everyone, and by that I mean adults and teens, of the value of ethics and moral implications.
Yeah.
I think we don't do this as much in schools because we're afraid, well, there's different religious backgrounds and but we all know right and wrong when it comes to cheating or stealing or whatever. We'd all agree. So show them a GPS and then a compass. In fact, we like to do this, one of our habitudes. So a GPS is an instrument that helps navigate directions, right? But so is a compass. So talk over the difference between the two. A GPS gives you directions if you know the address you wish to visit. A compass helps you to find true north regardless of where you are, even in uncharted territory. So new technology like this is placing us in new territory that requires morals, ethics, and values to navigate our journey. Just say, kids, don't forget your true north.
Yeah.
And believe the best about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so important that you don't just have this conversation from an objective standpoint. That is really important to say. Cheating is always wrong, right? It just is. But to also give students a chance to have that kind of personal values conversation as well with the compass and go, we all know cheating is wrong. What other values do you have that you say, I want this to be true about me no matter the context? I think it's really important that students get brought into that conversation to kind of share what's on their minds as well.
Yeah, absolutely. On this podcast, I've shared before that goofy story of my past. When I was in high school running on the track team, Tom was practicing with us, long distance running. The coaches weren't watching. They were just standing there with a clock on the other side of the track.
Yeah.
Tom took a shortcut. I mean, by shortcut, I mean he ducked behind the bleachers, didn't run all the laps, joined the rest of us on the final lap, and he won.
Okay.
Well, so that was a shortcut.
Yep.
So on that day he won, qualified, but he was not ready for the real meet when everybody was watching every lap.
Yeah. And you couldn't sneak off. Yeah.
Exactly. I think this is a little bit of a picture. In fact, steal it if it's helpful, listeners. Don't duck off behind the bleachers by using this and think, great, I'm ahead. One day you're going to have an employer. You're going to have a spouse.
Yeah.
You're going to have friends that realize you didn't get ready for this part of life, did you? Because you cheated earlier.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it's key to have that conversation.
Yeah. That's so good.
The last one here, number 4, identify software as it becomes available to track the use of ChatGPT. So software already exists to avoid detecting if ChatGPT. In fact, I'm going to give you some names in just a minute. So get a pad and paper ready if you're not driving. Okay. So stay alert for new software that arises, enabling educators to detect it. Already existing platforms can help, and let me give you some names. Hugging Face Detector is the name of one, Hugging Face Detector. Writer is one, WRITER, and that ChatGPT 0 is the name. And then Microsoft, you mentioned, just launched another platform called Copilot.
Yeah.
But all of them are designed to kind of get in there and see, this doesn't sound like Johnny's paper after all.
Yeah, these are different tools that would help you integrate it. So for a lot of the ones Tim just mentioned, you'll actually be able to take a paper that a student wrote, upload it into here, and it will tell you, I think what it gives you is actually the percentage of this that they think was written by an AI is what they actually do.
Yeah.
So you'll get a number back like 78% or whatever, and that'll let you know the kid probably used, this to do that. So students should be aware that this is real. At the same time as the technology to cheat comes out, the technology to catch the cheating also comes out.
That's so true. Yeah. So this year, we should experience even more apps launching that help caring adults guide kids and detect the misuse of this smart technology. So can I just remind you before we begin to close out here, Andrew? Listeners, we should teach that technology is neither evil or good.
Yeah.
Television can be good and horrible, both.
Yep.
We all know that now. This is the same. So don't be the grumpy old man or grumpy old woman that isn't embracing any technology. We just need guardrails.
Yeah.
Technology is neutral and will accomplish good or bad outcomes based on its use.
Yeah.
So it needs to be our servant, not our master. I've said that, a million times.
Yes.
It should be a tool, not a weapon, and the outcomes for our students may just be up to us.
Yeah, it's time that we did not panic, but instead we're just more aware that this is a new season to practice old skills, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, to that end, you and I were just chatting a couple of weeks ago because I was at a recent event, probably a month ago, and I started talking about a book that you and I worked on back in 2017.
Yeah.
And because of ChatGPT, one of the things that we said in that book became even more relevant all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And it was something I've talked about for many years, but when I said, think about how this applies to ChatGPT, the whole audience went, whoa, you're exactly right. Yeah. So I'd love for you to actually close out our time by going back to that. So the book we wrote was Marching Off the Map. It came out back in 2017. And we were helping educators understand how we need to adapt to the changing world that we're in.
Yeah.
The world has continued to change since 2017.
Yeah, it's so true.
And one of the things that we wrote down was an acknowledgement of how the world has changed and how it might continue to change. And in a lot of ways, ChatGPT is sort of proving our point that we wrote in 2017.
Or at least illustrating, for sure. Yeah. So when you think, folks, about world history, humans have gone through different stages of world history where we learn to live our lives differently. So thousands of years ago, we as people were experiencing the agricultural age.
Yeah.
Most of our jobs were outside, and it was agriculture, livestock or land.
Yes.
And the key element to thrive in the agricultural age was our muscles. I mean, I'm just being blunt here.
Yeah.
If you were stronger, you lasted longer, and you were a good farmer,
you were more helpful,
rancher or whatever. That was agricultural age. Key element, muscles.
Yep.
Then we moved into the industrial age, okay? The Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution moved us into a time where now it wasn't just about our muscles. In fact, the key element to thrive here was our machines.
Yeah.
We had conveyor belts and assembly lines and factories, thank you, Henry Ford, okay?
It wasn't the biggest and the strongest. It was the person who had the best machine or the most effective and efficient machine.
That's exactly right. So things were shifting. Then we moved into, even in my lifetime, granted I'm a dinosaur, but we moved into the information age. I remember as an elementary school, we're in the information age.
Yeah.
And in the information age, that basically says that most kids as they graduate school are going to use their minds.
Yeah.
The key element to thrive in the information age is our minds.
Absolutely.
Most of us listening would say, yep, I use my brain every day. At least I should, use my brain every day, okay? So the agricultural age was the pre-modern era. The industrial age was the modern era. The information age is mostly the postmodern era.
Yeah.
But I believe we have moved into the intelligence age.
Yeah.
It's smart technology.
Absolutely.
Where our technology is smart, our clothes one day will be smart soon.
Yeah. Our speakers are smart. That's
right.
Sure.
Cars are smart.
Yeah.
Our house is smart. We're not rich people, but we've got a smart house. You can, with our phone, you turn on the lights, lock the doors, set the alarm. It's just amazing. So I believe in the intelligence age. The key element to thrive is our morals. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, and I'm not turning this into anything but what it is. We've got to be moral people to navigate this future that is in front of us.
Yeah.
Ready or not, like it or not, smart technology could make us worse people or better people based on how we manage it.
Yeah.
So it's huge. And you reminded me of a quote the other day. Would you close with this quote, and I'll let you wrap things up?
Yeah, I love this. It says, you can tell a person is smart by their answers. You can tell they are wise by their questions.
Yep.
And isn't that exactly what we're talking about? What questions are we asking of the smart technology we have access to? Because ultimately our success, whether or not we're leveraging it well, is going to come down to how we use it, not just if we use it.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important thing to remember. Well, Tim, thank you so much for your insight. Thank you for leading this conversation and helping us all think wisely as new technology is coming at us all the time. If you're looking for ways to help build some skills in your students that are going to be able to help them make better choices, right? Practice that moral intelligence that we were just talking about. I want to commend to you our tool Habitudes, whether it's a book you want to open around the dinner table or a program you want to implement at a school or a university or an athletic program. Habitudes is a great tool for that. I would strongly commend to you our Habitudes for Social and Emotional Learning program. It's going to cover all of the soft skills students need in order to be ready for real life. So that, if you want to find out more about that, you go to our website. It's www.growingleaders.com/SEL. Growingleaders.com/SEL. You can find out more information about our middle school and high school program. Well, as always, if you would rate this podcast, give us 5 stars on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, we would greatly appreciate it. If you found this podcast particularly helpful, maybe there's a parent or a teacher or someone else who you think needs to engage with it, we invite you to share that with them. We would greatly appreciate that. If you want to connect with us online, we are at Growing Leaders and at Tim Elmore pretty much everywhere you are. And then finally, if you have ideas for this podcast, we invite you to shoot those over to us, whether it's something you think we should talk about or a person you think we should interview. Shoot us an email. It's podcast@growingleaders.com. We love getting those. Tim, thank you once again for leading this conversation. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.